The 13th Shelf. Investigations into the underground world of the occult. In Berkeley, California, an occult scholar and ruthless skeptic, Sebastian Darrow, runs a boutique detective agency that investigates supernatural claims around the globe. He's a ferocious bibliophile with the world's deepest private archive in parapsychology and the occult. With a tight four-person team, he exposes frauds, comforts the misled, and once in a while finds something that refuses to be explained. Episode 4. Huldufolk Survey. Cold open, Hafnarfjordur lava field, 0213. The wind off the bay tastes like metal and salt. A municipal survey crew works by headlamp around a lava outcrop locals call Elf Ridge, a flow of black rock that looks like it paused mid-spell. A total station chirps. A GNSS rover blinks steady green. The foreman, Einar Sigurdsson, calls a coordinate and the world hums back, low like a note under hearing. The rover's light flickers, then steadies, then lies. Hold, Einar says. A tech, Gulla, frowns at her tablet. Fix drifted 12 meters north, she says. No line of sight issues. The hum thickens. A drone wobbles, corrects, and sinks onto basalt like a tired gull. In a pickup's cab, the radio whispers through static. Leave the stones. The words aren't a voice so much as a sentence that borrowed a throat. Einar swallows. Who said that? Gulla lifts the radio. Only hiss. The drone's prop spins once, then dies. A headlamp beam runs against rock, catches a tuft of wool snagged on a shard. The hum becomes a suggestion that becomes a feeling. Nape hairs. Gut. The sensor room has opinions. Shut it down, Einar says, voice too loud in his own ears. We're not fighting the elves at 2 a.m. The hum subsides as the generator coughs and rests. The field remembers how to be night. Cut to black. Scene 1. The loft. Darrow inquiry. Morning. The whiteboard carries a neat spine of the season. 13-1, Berkeley. 13-2, Prague. 13-3, Varanasi. Underneath, Iceland, Huldufolk survey in Imani's hand. Sebastian Darrow listens while Einar Sigurdsson describes his week over a video call framed by a map of Reykjanes. My crew is practical, Einar says. We joke about elves and drive around boulders when grandmothers yell at us. 2 nights in a row our GPS went bad near a protected outcrop. A drone lost its mind, and the radio said something it shouldn't say. Anyone trying to stall you? Sebastian asks. A developer wants the road pushed through, Einar says. Another wants it pushed around. They both smile and shake my hand with the same amount of sincerity. Respectfully, who asked for us? Imani asks. 2 people, Einar says. The planning office, who want the numbers, and Sigridur Thorsdottir, the folklorist who attended our town meeting and said, "Don't insult the rocks by lying about them." She told me you don't lie and you don't insult. Good recommendation, Rafe says. We'll aim to live up to it. Dr. Indira Narayan's voice arrives through the loft speaker. Bring warm layers, she says, and my microbarographs. Maylin Zhao is already sketching in the margin. Sensor layout, mast height, a rectangle labelled RF sweep. And a dual-band GNSS with disciplined oscillator, she says. If this is spoofing, we'll see the fingerprints. Courtesy first, Sebastian says. We'll talk to planning and to Sigridur. Then we'll stand where your crew stood and let the field talk. Scene 2. Courtesy. Hafnarfjordur's town hall is practical wood and light, full of chairs that know meetings. Katrin Johansdottir, planning director, greets them with a measured nod. We want a road that doesn't become a story, she says. We also want to avoid a petition that makes the story the road. We don't make enemies of stories, Sebastian says. We make them tell the truth they can live with. In a second meeting room, Sigridur Thorsdottir, a folklorist with warm eyes and a spine that has opinions, unfolds a laminated map of sites locals treat with care. You will not debunk people, she says. It is not a question. We don't debunk belief, Sebastian says. We debunk harm. Sigridur approves with the smallest lift of her chin. The outcrop you are visiting is old lava and newer memory, she says. A road was humorously suggested that would take 3 meters of it. People said no. Your surveyors say their machines are moody. I have heard the hum they mention. It is unnerving. If it is wind in a throat, show me the throat. If it is men with gadgets, show me their wallets. Both can be true, Indira says from the speaker. Wind makes music. Men make mischief. Sigridur smiles. You sound like a saga. We sound like testers, Malin says. But I like your version better. Scene 3. Reki, Elf Ridge. The lava field looks like a moment that cooled too quickly. Ropey pahoho, jagged pockets and tunnels frozen mid-breath. Spray drifts in off the bay. The outcrop locals care for rises like a shoulder. Beyond, a low slope runs towards sea-worn basalt caves. Einar meets them beside the truck. Same gear as before, he says. We'll do it clean. Malin plants microbarographs in a triangle around the outcrop. We'll log pressure fluctuations in the infrasound range, she says. 18 to 20 hertz has a reputation. We'll test whether it deserves one today. Indira's remote console streams displays, pressure spectra, wind speed, humidity. You've got a nice standing wave opportunity when the wind comes on shore, she says. Natural pipe organ. Imani walks the perimeter with a clipboard and her own method. She notes where lichen grows thicker and where paths cut around boulders. She takes a rubbing of a small notch in basalt, habit more than plan, using charcoal and paper from her bag labelled Rubbings Field. Rafe stands silent for a minute with his eyes closed. It's loud, he says softly. Not in sound, in feeling. Suggestion, Indira says. Also physics. Standby sensor 2. He moves. The hum finds the bones around his eyes. He exhales through his nose and lets his shoulders drop. Noted. The GNSS rover acquires, holds, then drifts. There, Gula says, pointing at a plot. Cross-track error leaps. It's not sky view, it's lying. Malin looks up the slope toward a line of temporary site trailers belonging to Nordic Vista, the developer lobbying for the road to take the straight path. A small antenna glints on a trailer roof that looks, at this distance, like weather reporting. RF sweep, she says, and walks, sensor mast over her shoulder like a flag. Scene 4. The hum. Wind rises. Indira's plots shiver. Low-frequency energy builds around 18.9 Hz. Microbarograph 2 reports pressure oscillations in fractions of a pascal that still feel like suggestion more than air. Onshore flow through a constricted opening, Indira narrates. Think bottle-top tone, scaled up. The throat is probably a lava tube opening near Rock 3, masked by scrub. Sebastian walks toward the slope and finds the opening, a low, irregular oval made of shadows and bad decisions. He kneels, holds a small streamer near the lip. The strip flutters, then slaps in a pattern of punctuation, on, off, on. Stand here and give people a story, Rafe says, eyes at half-mast. They will give you a haunting. We don't take it away, Sebastian says. We give it footnotes. Imani is studying the rubbing she made, thumb black with charcoal. She frowns, then holds it toward the light. Across the rough impression of basalt, shallow characters resolve S-13/7. Sebastian. He looks. The characters are not Viking runes or someone's initials. They are a tidy, hesitant S, a dash, the number 13, a slash, and a 7. Not carved for tourists, etched faint, low, half an arm span from the ground, where a careful person might have placed a knee and worked slowly. Who would carve a shelf code into a rock? Rafe asks, flat with a worry he doesn't want to unpack. The same hand that wants us to keep moving, Sebastian says, or someone who wants us to believe the hand is old and clever. Sigridur steps close, adjusts her glasses, studies the rubbing. This is not a local habit, she says. Our people carve initials, dates, hearts that regret themselves later. This looks like a librarian had a chisel. Or a binder, Imani says. Photograph the site, Sebastian says. Angle to catch shadow. And no one touches the rock. We leave it to the people who tend it. Scene 5. The Lie in the Sky. Malin's RF sweep reads like a personality test. GNSS L1 and L2 present themselves politely, but there's an extra set of signals, too clean, too consistent, arriving from nowhere in the sky and exactly from the direction of the Nordic Vista trailer. Indira hums. You've got a low-power spoofer, she says. Someone is broadcasting counterfeit satellite constellation data to persuade rovers they're standing somewhere else. Can they say it's testing? Katrine the planner asks. Our contractors occasionally test equipment. Not without notifying Einar's crew and not with this payload, Maylin says. They're feeding an old almanac. The rover thinks Tuktoyaktuk is very nice this time of year. Einar blows out through his teeth. It would explain how our drone decided the ground was elsewhere. Document first, Sebastian says. Then a knock. They set a honey trap. A GNSS receiver with a disciplined oscillator logs everything. A second captures IQ samples. A third, shielded, confirms sky truth. When the spoofer comes alive again, at 21 minutes past the hour, all three agree. Someone lied, deliberately, at a power level that made the lie friendly within 100 meters and invisible beyond. Sebastian and Katrin walk up to the trailer. A man in a branded fleece meets them. Aron Valdimarsson, site logistics for Nordic Vista. He looks like competence wore a frown it found in a drawer. We're busy, he says. So are we, Katrin says. Turn off your toy. Aron shrugs. We test a low-power repeater for internal navigation. No harm. Your no harm knocked a drone into the ground, Einar says, arriving voice even. Turn it off, Aron. Aron looks more offended than concerned. We'll talk to our legal. Do, Katrin says, and turn it off while they find their email. Or I will schedule a formal site inspection and ask a different department to look at your permits. Aron hesitates, makes a show of calling someone, and the little antenna's light goes from busy to bored. Keep it bored, Maylin says, pleasant. Scene 6. The Voice. That night, the team returns to the outcrop without the city's ears. They stand in the dark with the hum. The radios sit in a neat row on a rock like respectful birds. Who said leave the stones? Rafe asks the knight. A person who wanted to be a god, or a god who wanted to be a person? Or a radio picking up a phrase someone seeded, Sebastian says. VHF is promiscuous when terrain permits. So are people. They bring a portable spectrum analyzer to the frequency the crew uses. Indira watches the waterfall. I have a narrow FM carrier from midfield, she says. Low power. Amateurs with a handheld could do this and dress it as environment. Or someone with a contractor badge and a dull imagination, Rafe says. They walk the field with a loop antenna, triangulating by a method older than complaint. Near a stand of scrub, they find a pelican case zip-tied to a stake. Inside, batteries, a cheap handheld transceiver on Vox, and a cheap voice module with a microSD card labelled, with a sense of poetry that tries too hard, Alpha. Maylin lifts it with gloved hands. Somebody suggested an epiphany, she says, cheaply. Sigridur frowns. I do not like pranksters who borrow belief for hobbies. We'll treat it as a safety hazard that looks like a prank, Sebastian says. Safer paperwork. Less drama. Scene 7. The message to Rafe. Back at the guest house, a paper bag sits outside their door, folded carefully. Inside, a small stone with lichen on it, a sprig of heather, and a folded note in childish block script. Raphael. Ask her about the red scarf under the stove. Ask him about the coin in the sleeve. Trees sur sept. Rafe stops breathing long enough for everyone to notice. He looks like a person who has been touched gently on a bruise he never points to. Who knows about the scarf? He asks, looking at Sebastian as if the question is unfair. Whoever did their homework, Sebastian says, eyes soft. Childhood is not a secret if someone wants to spend the time, or if someone from your past wants to be cruel. Rafe sits. His voice is a reasonable simulation of a voice. When I was 14, a woman told me my dead uncle missed me. She told me to look under the stove at my grandmother's house for a red scarf. There was a scarf there because my uncle left things everywhere and the house was small. It was a good trick, and it hurts to this day. The coin was a stage whisper on television. I told them where to sew it. I'm not a reliable witness to my own comfort. Maylin's jaw sets. So now they are writing at you. Now they are trying to break him, Indira says. Note filed. Noted also that we do not perform for this sender. Imani turns the note under the desk lamp. The paper is laid, the watermark faint, a bell in a box. The pencil strokes are careful, not naive. The S13/7 matches the rubbing. Photograph sleeve log, Sebastian says. He puts a hand on Rafe's shoulder, the weight of it exactly right. They do not get to design you. We'll find out who did the homework. Rafe nods, breath returning in increments. We'll finish the case, he says. Then we'll teach someone about aftercare the hard way. Scene 8. The meeting. Town hall again, but with more neighbours and more coffee. Einar, Katrin, Sigrida, and a scattering of residents, including Björk Gunnarsdottir, a grandmother who has opinions about boulders. Sebastian presents without theatre infrasound. Wind over a lava tube opening produced a low-frequency oscillation measured at approximately 18.9 Hertz. This can make some people feel uneasy, he says. We move slowly and assume good faith in our bodies. GNSS spoofing. A low-power device broadcast counterfeit satellite data during 2 survey windows, causing coordinate drift and a drone landing. Testing without coordination is sabotage, Katrin adds. We are addressing it. Radio voice. A handheld transceiver and voice module seeded a phrase. Good prank, bad ethics, Sebastian says. It has been removed. Aftercare, practical changes. Windscreens around the tube opening during survey to lower infrasound intensity. Confirm positions with total stations when GNSS acts odd. Schedule survey windows outside the competitors' testing hours. Equip crews with a checklist that treats feelings as data. He ends with a slide of the outcrop lit beautifully by ordinary light. This place matters, he says. We don't have to choose between respect and truth. We can tell truer stories that do less harm. Björk lifts her hand. Will the road move? She asks. Katrin glances at Sigridur, then at Einar. We can keep the road where it is planned with micro-adjustments that leave the outcrop untouched, she says. Cheaper than a fight, kinder than a cut. Björk nods, satisfied. Good, she says. I have no patience for men with shiny vests and dull heads. The room laughs. The pressure leaves it. Scene 9. Forensics of a carving. Imani and Sigrida return to the outcrop with a conservator from the local museum, Magnus Pettersson, who carries a kit that suggests competence. They photograph the S-13/7 mark in oblique light with a scale. Magnus examines the cut walls. Not old, he says. Within a year. Tool marks say a modern point chisel or a carbide scribe, and the hand wasn't comfortable on rock. So likely our sender, Imani says. Or a helper. Sigrida presses her lips. If I find them, she says, I will make them write a letter to the outcrop. Magnus smiles. We'll help them spell. They do not fill the cut. They document it and place a small sign that says in Icelandic and English, please do not carve the elves' house. Sigridur insists for the wording. It is perfect. Scene 10. The developer. Katrin schedules a formal meeting with Nordic Vista. Aaron attends with a lawyer who has a haircut like an invoice. The planner lays out the facts. GNSS interference, unauthorized testing, a removed voice device, a community angry but not yet petitioning. She offers the developer an exit, public apology, documented cessation, donation to survey equipment for the municipality, and a promise to route crews around sensitive hours. The lawyer asks for a softer verb than apologize. Katrin says, no. Aaron signed. Why the noise? Sebastian asks Aaron later, not an accusation, an anthropological curiosity. Aaron shrugs. Delay buys leverage, he says. We created doubt. Doubt is a tool. Doubt is not a toy, Rafe says. Aaron looks at him, misreading him entirely. Everything is a toy if you are paid, he says. Rafe's smile doesn't move above the mouth. Good to know who not to hire. Scene 11. The archivist's thread. Back in Reykjavik, at a small reading room near Laugavegur, Elín Ólafsdóttir, a private archivist who sometimes finds things people don't know they need, pulls a folder labeled BAYAREABINDERNOTES from a drawer. This came with a personal donation from an émigré who returned twice, she says. A notebook from the 1950s by a geologist who loved paper more than rocks, if we can believe his marginalia. Imani reads, Telegraph Avenue bindery did repair on field journal. Ticket, Alonso and Lyle, laughed to find it in Reykjavik. On the next page, a rubbing of a circular ticket. In the margin, S-13/7 question of code. Ellen smiles at their faces. We are a small place where bigger places leave fingerprints, she says. It is a sport to find them. May we image this? Sebastian asks. Ellen nods. With coffee, they oblige. Scene 12, How the Hum Ends. Einar's crew returns to Elf Ridge with windscreens erected near the tube opening. Canvas and frame in a pattern that looks like camping decided to be serious. The hum drops a third. It does not vanish, which would be suspicious. It becomes a room tone instead of a solo. The GNSS holds. The drone lifts, surveys, lands. The radio says nothing humans did not ask it to say. Gulla smiles at the tablet. I prefer the boring version, she says. Fewer stories. More sleep. Sigridur places a small, respectful offering at the foot of the outcrop. A handful of rye and a tiny braid of grass. For the neighbors, she says. She looks at Sebastian. For me to look at them, it helps if I am polite. We approve of polite, Sebastian says. It's one of our vices. Scene 13, The Envelope. Back in the guest house, late. The hall knows the sound of a thin envelope sliding under a door now. It knows it well enough to be embarrassed by it. Sebastian lifts the envelope with a spatula and glycine, the choreography automatic. Inside, a strip of laid paper with the bell in a box watermark. Pencil, neat, 13-4. Below, a word, Iceland. In the corner, a faint graphite line like a half-erased curve, the trace of a circle, the ghost of a binder's ticket imprint. Rafe reads it and does not flinch. We knew it was coming, he says. We did, Sebastian says. We do not have to like that it came with our names. Imani's mouth is a flat line that contains many sentences. Next time they try the personal, we answer with public, she says. We make their habit a community question. Who mailed this? Who paid? The answers aren't magic. Agreed, Indira says. Also sleep. Tomorrow we leave. Scene 14, Aftercare. The report Sebastian writes lives in Hafnarfjörð's files. Incident. Survey anomalies near a culturally significant lava outcrop. Crew reported voices, GNSS drift, drone misbehavior, physical unease. Findings. Natural infrasound approximately 18.9 Hz produced by onshore wind at a lava tube opening contributed to discomfort. A low-power GNSS spoofer at a nearby developer trailer induced coordinate drift and drone landing. A cheap VHF transmitter/voice module seeded a phrase on crew radios. Actions. Removed spoofer and voice device. Implemented windscreens and survey scheduling. Adopted cross-check with total stations. Created a one-page field courtesy and safety sheet that treats reported sensations as actionable data. Public meeting held. Developer signed apology and funded municipal survey equipment. Cultural care. Outcrop remains untouched. Signage discourages carving. Offering custom respected. Folklorist liaison retained to advise on communications. A separate memo, internal, not public, goes into ARC, 13th shelf, item, basalt carving S13/7, recent. Rubbing documented. Note on laid paper 13-4, bell in a box watermark. Reykjavik private archive notebook mentions Alonso and Lyle ticket and S13/7 decades ago. Inference. Sender continues to place breadcrumbs keyed to a 1920s Bay Area binder, indexing entries as 13 to N, possibly mapping us with geographic tags. Motivations. Market inflation for a mythic catalogue. Personal game, coercion. Rafe targeted via childhood law. Escalation noted. Next, cross-reference S-13/7 against any extant shelf or catalogue numbering in Bay Area collections. Query Aldrich, Prague, and Ellin, Reykjavik, for any mention of supplemental catalogue with shelf notation. Prepare for copycat placements. Assume sender monitors our travel. He prints both. Files the first with Katrine's office, locks the second in the vault, and writes 13-4 under 13-3 on the whiteboard back home. Scene 15, Coda, Who Writes Us. Before they fly, Sigridur walks Sebastian to the edge of the field. The wind is kind today, the hum is a memory. I like your way, she says. You did not say there are no elves. You said there is also wind. We are minimalists, he says. We assume the world is enough. And your shelf? She asks, eyes amused and a little sharp. Will you find it? We will find whether it wants to be found, he says. Which is different. She nods. Good answer. Tell your friend who received the note. When a trick tries to make him small, it is not a trick. It is a theft. Put it back where it belongs. I will, he says. On the plane, Rafe sleeps with his head tilted in the way of a man who has decided to let one battle happen later. Imani reads Ellen's photocopied notebook. Maylin edits a field kit checklist titled, Don't be bothered by elves. Be bothered by physics. Indira sends a final plot of infrasound amplitude versus reported discomfort. The correlation is not perfect, and that is perfect. Sebastian looks out over cloud and writes in his pocket notebook a question he keeps pretending is a joke. Who profits if we read? He underlines profits twice, then crosses it out and writes pleasures above it. He lets that semantic argument sit with the air. The city greets them with familiar light. The vault welcomes another thin envelope. The whiteboard accepts 13-4 without complaint. Next episode, The Fox's Wedding, Kyoto, Japan.